Welcome everyone to Dissemination Nation, a short-form podcast hosted by the University of North Florida's Exercises Medicine on Campus program. Today I'm joined by Dr. James Churilla, an established professor and researcher in the field of cardiometabolic health and nutrition. And today we're going to be covering heart health, as February is the American Heart Association's Heart Month. Dr. James Churilla, thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me, Evan.
Absolutely. So if you don't mind, would you mind starting off by telling us a little bit about your background and what your focus of research is?
Yeah, so my focus of research for most of my career has been cardiometabolic health, but let me tell you where I came from. So I owned a fitness company in South Florida for about 8 years, and I did personal training, and that's after graduating from Towson University with a degree in kinesiology. I then went on to FIU in Miami to get a degree in public health, master's degree, and also exercise physiology, so 2 master's degrees. I pursued a Ph.D. at Tennessee in exercise physiology and physical activity epidemiology, and then I did a postdoc at the CDC in Atlanta, and here I am at UNF now for 18 years.
Awesome. And what brings you here to UNF? What brought you here?
Well, I think my wife's family was in Florida, so happy wife, happy life. I had other opportunities in Maryland and North Carolina, but we decided here. At first, I didn't think I would be staying here because I came from an R1 institution and I thought I'd be at a bigger research school.
Sure.
We're now at UNF moving in that direction we're now a Carnegie R2 institution. So that's good to see. It's taken a long time, but that does take a long time.
Sure.
But I thought I would be here for a few years and move on, but it just so happens that the type of research that I do, I use big data sets that are publicly available, and I can do that anywhere. And so we decided to stay in Florida.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's get into the good stuff.
Sure.
So cardiometabolic research is constantly booming and evolving on a regular basis. So if you can tell me, what are some of the big nuggets that you've come across the past 5 or 10 years that you think would be important to the average person to know?
Yeah, I think, Evan, in our field, our focus has always been on physical activity, exercise, structured or not structured, okay? I mean, we even have people standing at desks now at work. But I think the big thing that's happened over the last 5 or 10 years is the focus has moved a little bit away from physical activity and more so toward lack of physical activity or sedentary behavior.
Sure.
And some of us in the field feel that it's easier for us to measure that because it's more prevalent.
Sure.
So we move a lot less than we move. And we're always talking about trying to meet the physical activity guidelines, and probably way before your time, when I first got into this field, it was about how many days per week you were exercising, how many minutes per day you were exercising. Now we just need people to move 150 minutes a week, and however they want to get that, it's going to work. We'd like to get that over a few days, not all in one, but we just need them to start moving.
Sure.
And so the new guidelines are 150 minutes, but now we're coming out with sedentary guidelines. Not to be sedentary for periods of time, not to go for more than an hour without standing up. And I think that's going to become an area of more and more research moving forward.
Sure.
We have a lot of physical activity research, but now, for example, a study that we've done here was a sedentary time heart failure study, and we were able to show a strong relationship between how long somebody is sedentary and a certain subtype of heart failure. Absolutely. So we've moved from looking at just activity to looking at activity and inactivity. And probably, one of the big nuggets that's come from that over the last, let's say, 10 years or so is, even if you are physically active, if you're still sedentary, it negates the effects. So we're kind of caught in a conundrum here to where how much exercise is enough to stay healthy, but how much exercise is enough to stay healthy if you have a lot of sedentary time in your life? I don't think we really have the answers to all of that yet.
So it's your contention then that sedentary research will probably take the foreground and be most prominent over physical activity research within the next few years?
I think so, yes. I think it may be now.
Okay.
Like I said, we have a lot of physical activity and exercise research, and we know physical activity is good for you. Every time you come back from a meeting, it's like, what did you learn? Exercise is good for you. We know that, right? But sedentary behavior is deleterious. I mean, it just negates everything that the physical activity is trying to be a benefit or accomplish for someone. And I'm not saying that if you're sedentary and you're physically active and you really can't change your lifestyle, that you should make these drastic changes to where you have to figure out a way to be more active or less sedentary. What I'm saying is, I think what's more important at this point is you have to find out a way to be less sedentary.
Sure.
I mean, we only have so much time in a day. So physical activity is important, but sedentary behavior may be more important. And this doesn't include sleep. We knew about sedentary behavior and lack of movement way back with the astronaut studies and the bed rest studies. We knew that. But it's so prominent today. We just don't move enough. And sitting is the new smoking. And that's where we are. It's going to pass smoking, if it hasn't already, as far as deleterious health effects.
Sure. And for our followers, you can look forward to more podcasts where we talk with other researchers, such as Dr. Lindsay Toth and Dr. Jessica Stapleton, about how to address physical inactivity and sedentary behaviors and how you can become more physically active. If we can move on, I would like to talk about where your future research, what it looks like, what you would like to accomplish within these next few years when it comes to research.
Yeah, so I started with metabolic syndrome, and I moved to the individual components, and that was all physical activity research. And then I started to look at heart failure and the different subtypes of heart failure. And that's when I started to get into more of the inactivity or sedentary research. And I see myself staying in that area, looking at heart failure and subtypes with the students and the grad assistants. But I'm also starting to get involved in lifestyle medicine and lifestyle medicine research. We have a study going on right now with one of the graduate assistants looking at a lifestyle medicine score that we created and stroke. So the association between lifestyle medicine score and stroke in people that have hyperglycemia. So if somebody has hyperglycemia or diabetes and they're a higher risk for stroke, there's a lifestyle medicine score that's better, provide them with protection.
Sure.
And so we're currently doing that. And I see some other studies coming down the road with lifestyle medicine score, one being lower GI cancers and others being insulin resistant studies looking at this same score to try to validate the score we've created.
Sure. And just as an overview, can you discuss what heart failure is for some of our listeners who may not be familiar with?
Sure. Heart failure is nothing more than the heart's inability to pump as efficiently as it needs to perfuse the organs in the body. And there's different types of heart failure. Some people have what's called reduced ejection fraction heart failure, and some people have preserved ejection fraction heart failure. Both of them are perfusion issues. But the things that cause those two types of heart failure are different. So we have a lot of data on the etiology of reduced ejection fraction heart failure. We call it REF. But we don't have as much good therapeutic data on preserved ejection fraction heart failure. We have data, but not a lot of things seem to work to improve or prevent preserved ejection fraction heart failure. Like I said, one of the studies that we've done here in the last decade was a sedentary time study that did show to be significantly associated with prospective incident PEF, so the kind of heart failure that we don't have a lot of data on. So that's good. We've added to the arsenal. But we have so much more good data on therapeutics, including activity and exercise for reduced ejection. We need a lot more data on preserved ejection fraction heart failure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a few more fun and interesting questions for you.
Sure.
So since it is Heart Month via the American Heart Association, if you were to ban one food as it relates to heart health, what would you ban and why?
If I was to ban one food besides fried Twinkies?
Sure.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know if it would be a food per se as much as it would be an ingredient.
Okay.
So I think we've all heard about trans fats, and I think trans fats should be eradicated from every food label and every food out there. It's a fat that's very unstable. We don't know what it does in the body. We do know that it's significantly associated with atherosclerosis, but it's an ingredient that I would ban for sure. Trans fat would be an ingredient I would ban. And then I think, to maybe make it not so drastic as far as banning it completely, but significantly reducing common sugar intake would really help the health of most people in the world. I mean, everyone thinks that sugar is bad for you. And as an exercise physiologist yourself, Evan, Sugar is not bad for us.
No.
Too much sugar is bad for us. The type of sugars we take in can be bad for us. The problem with sugar is it creates insulin responses. Insulin in excess is what is bad for us.
Right.
Insulin is what makes people gain weight and gain fat,
Correct.
not sugar. And so I would say trans fats need to be banned,
Sure.
and sugar needs to be looked at really closely by researchers and by everybody who's interested in their health, because of the fact that excess sugar means excess insulin, and insulin is something that really causes a lot of deleterious health problems.
Sure.
And so I would say ban trans fats and really take a good look at how much sugar you're taking in.
Sure. And so are you saying that there's maybe a correct time to be consuming sugar?
Yeah, well, as you know, whether it's regular sucrose table sugar or whether it's a simple carbohydrate of some other form, following activity or exercise, that 90 to 120 minute window is the time to have the sugar if you're going to have it. If you're going to have a soda, that's when you have it.
Yeah.
It's probably better to have a protein shake or something else, or get your sugars from a fruit. But if you're going to have that, and that's going to be your vice,
Yeah.
there's a time to have it. The worst time to have it is like on a Friday or Saturday night watching the game, just drinking Coca-Cola and eating bagels or potato chips. I mean, that's just, that's the problem we have with abdominal adiposity, hyperinsulinemia, insulin resistance, and then type 2 diabetes,
Yeah.
which is now epidemic in our country and other parts around the world.
Mm-hmm. And so my final question to you would be, we've talked a lot about exercise today, but if there was one lifestyle habit besides exercise that you could suggest to people to make modifications to in order to improve their heart health, what would that lifestyle recommendation be?
Sleep.
Sleep.
Yeah, I think people are sleep deprived, and people that don't get enough sleep, people think they can run on 5 or 6 hours of sleep, and most people can run on it, but you can't see what's going on inside your body. You've heard this before from me. If we could see what was going on inside of our bodies, we'd make significant changes.
Correct.
Significant changes. We don't get enough sleep.
Sure.
People who get less than 7 hours of sleep are inflamed.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by inflamed is we have markers we measure that are higher than they should be, that lead to all types of things. They lead to different types of cancers. They lead to atherosclerosis. They can lead to cardiovascular events.
Mm-hmm.
And so people are inflamed when they don't get enough sleep. When you don't get enough sleep, you're not agile. You're not alert. You just don't get enough. The American College of Lifestyle Medicine advocates for 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. Now, you don't want to get much more than that, because once you go on the other end, it's a J or a U-shaped curve. I mean, you see risk coming down when you get enough sleep, but it starts to go back up if you get more sleep than you need. So less sleep or more sleep, no, you have to be in the middle, which is about 7 to 9. Now, if you get 6 hours one night, that doesn't mean your whole week's going to be shot. But if you can aim for 7 to 9 hours of sleep, that would be my recommendation. And it's not talked about a lot. You hear about cardiovascular disease because it's the #1 killer.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of things that lead to it. And sleep could be one of the things that could affect somebody's cardiovascular health, their mental health, their insulin and sugar status. I mean, it's all can be affected by sleep.
Sure. So most people typically think that poor sleep is only associated with cognitive decreases. Since it is Heart Month, we're curious, are there any direct associations or ties to decreased sleep and heart health that you know off the top of your
Well,
head?
there are some data available. I couldn't give you specifics on it.
Sure.
I'm not a sleep researcher. But there are some data available that speaks specifically to increased risks in diabetes and increased risks in cardiovascular disease in people that are sleep deprived.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's as much data available with people that get too much sleep, but I do know there are some deleterious effects for that as well. It's the people that are getting 4 and 5 hours of sleep. And some of these people, you hear the celebrities and the athletes, it's like, 4 or 5 hours, I'm up at this time in the morning. And people listen to those people.
Yeah.
Whether they want to be influencers or not, they are, because they're on television, people listen to them. But I would say, what I've seen in the literature thus far, it's mostly inflammation.
Mm-hmm.
And but there are some data out there that say that people that are sleep deprived, not only heart disease but also diabetes, they're at increased risk for.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for your conversation
Sure.
today,
You're
Dr.
welcome.
James Churilla. You can look forward to our next conversation with Dr. Lindsay Toth, but for now, Dissemination Nation signing out.